His revelation, as we started with, it gives us hope but also challenge. It exposes Him to us, but it also exposes ourselves to us. Number 4. And don't worry, number 5 is the conclusion. We're almost there. Number 4, what about us? What about revelation that exposes us? Well, when Jesus reveals Himself, we learn that hard-heartedness is what makes us slow to recognize Him. Hard-heartedness is what makes us slow to recognize Him. Verse 51, it says they were completely amazed, utterly shocked. Verse 52, now Mark, Jesus has got in the boat with them. He sees their doubt and He shows His compassion on them. But Mark gives us the critique. Mark doesn't go quite so easy. For they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. This is a stunning turn of events in the story of the disciples. Here is where we find ourselves going, ugh, these disciples, don't they get it? Think about it with me. Since that first time by the sea, they have received teaching about the soil of the heart and its potential hardness. They've had Jesus Himself explain the parables to them. They've experienced the calming of the storm, asking, who is this man? They've seen the demonic legions defeated. They've seen Him heal a sick woman and raise a dead girl to life. They've seen Him rejected at Nazareth, and they themselves have been sent out to teach and to heal and to drive out demons with great success under His authority. They've seen Him multiply, lastly, the loaves and the fishes. And yet, with increasing revelation coming to them, we see surprising setbacks in their faith. What do they struggle with? My wife and I were talking about this. What do you think? We were talking about what do you think was going on? And I think they were struggling with the incarnation. They were struggling with how could God be with us? How could the God of the universe be with us here in the boat? They're struggling to understand that the very God who multiplied the bread for their ancestors, the very God who had them cross the sea miraculously with their ancestors, was there in Jesus the Messiah. And for the first time in the book, the disciples are put in a decidedly negative light. And from this point forward, we will begin to follow their ups and downs and how they respond to Jesus. We will begin to follow their own struggle to faith. Even as we learn about Jesus, we'll follow this ragtag group of disciples at their low points and at their best points. From this point forward, we're going to see how serious the calling to sacrifice and to discipleship is. We'll hear and see Jesus, and yet we will struggle to hear and see the failures of the disciples who are closest to Him. And some would say, yeah, but Pastor, and this is true. This is very true. It gives us a little compassion, a little patience with the disciples. Some would say Jesus hasn't been risen yet, so they're kind of at a disadvantage. They don't have the Holy Spirit making them new on the inside. All of that, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Nevertheless, Mark writes this story after the resurrection, after the coming of the Holy Spirit, and he writes these things about their discipleship. Why? Because he is fully aware of the struggle of our own disciples and our own discipleship today and the church throughout generations. So Mark writes this critique because he knows firsthand at the heart of a challenge of discipleship is the revelation of Jesus versus the resistance of the world around us. He knows the challenge of churches in his own time in that Roman city and context who face the suffering of headwinds and life all around them. He knows how we are slow to grasp what God has done and to doubt His power to save. Mark knows how when we face a lack of finances, we'll ask, does He really multiply? When we get sick from some unexpected cause, we'll ask, does Jesus really heal? When we face the drama of our families, we'll ask, does He really give peace? Does He really restore? When we carry in our bodies the trouble of aging, we'll ask, does He remain faithful? When we suffer from trauma caused by others, or we've been dealt a bad hand in life, a really bad hand, we'll ask, does He sympathize with us in our weakness? And Mark knows that the same hard-heartedness which existed in Pharaoh, existed in the Israelites, existed in these disciples, would threaten the church today. It's the same word. Yes, the revelation of Jesus is the way forward. When the winds have pressed against us, when we don't think we can make it to the other side, when out of nowhere we feel like we're on our own, Jesus is the one who makes the way. Jesus is the way. But the revelation of Jesus also shines a light on our own hard-heartedness, our own struggle to believe. He shines a light on the fact that the greatest headwinds we face is our slowness to understand and grasp what God has truly done in Him. Number 5, this is your conclusion. When Jesus reveals Himself, He rescues those who recognize and run to Him. Mark 6, verse 53, when they had crossed over the lake, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, and it's just fascinating. Mark is contrasting the crowds. The crowds, they're up and down, they're fickle, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but in this case, they recognize Him. They recognized Jesus. And they ran. That gives us hope. And what did they do? They ran throughout that whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard He was. And wherever He went, into villages or towns or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged Him to let them touch even the edge of His cloak, and all who touched it were healed. So we are left with this. Even disciples, by not understanding who Jesus really is, can suffer from hard-heartedness. Even insiders who seem close to the things of God can be headed in the wrong direction in their faith and trust. The crowds, the towns, often fickle in their unbelief. Yes, in this case, they run to Jesus, and as they do, His power continues to work in their lives. And what we're learning is that our direction towards Jesus is as important as our location. What do you mean? There are plenty in the Bible Belt, in Jacksonville, who are in close proximity to the Lord. They grow up with the things of God. They speak Christianese. They know the Scriptures. They have grandparents and parents who pray for them. They're close proximity to the Lord. And you can be in close proximity to Him and have a heart that's pointed away from Him. This is the picture Mark wants us to grasp in our own discipleship. That it's possible for people, religious leaders, Jesus' own family, Jesus' own disciples, to be very near to the things of God, very near to the revelation of God, near to the knowledge of God, and yet have hearts that are hardened, moving away from the person and work of Jesus. And I think Mark would challenge us, let's be disciples who experience the revelation of Jesus in such a way that our hearts remain open, that our hearts remain sincere to His person, to His journey, to His work, to His cross. Because that's where all this is headed. Mark would say to us, let's be disciples who have a nearness to the things of God. A nearness to the things of God, and yet the faith like a child. Those who seem far away, the crowds running to Him, the blind and the ones that can't hear, yet we're so hungry for Him, we're running after Him because we recognize His work. I think Mark is saying, let's do both. Let's be near Him. But let's stay as a people. Jesus, I am a sinner. Have mercy on me. And let's cry that out from the depths of our hearts so that we stay humble before Him.
Thank you for watching our video. If you liked it, share it with a friend and subscribe to our channel. We go live every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thanks again for watching.